double monster yet today. I wonder if we'll see one on the way to work. rectangles. God, that word didn't want to come out. But that one was the cylindrical things wrapped in a black condom. This is getting a bit boring now, being stuck behind this tractor.
understand, Jack. Don't use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a
Because
break.
you're
Confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden.
Just this
The
radical
question-
left. Will you shut up, man?
American voters have heard all this before. The rematch between the two oldest candidates in history leaves them cold, with most people saying they do not like the choice they're being offered. Tailgating is such an American activity. It's basically a big party in a car park. I am outside Lincoln Field Stadium in Philadelphia. The Rolling Stones are about to go on stage, and I'm surrounded by people who are drinking beer, eating sandwiches and crisps, just having a great time before the gig. Soon Mick Jagger will be strutting his stuff. He is now 80 years old. He's only about a year younger than Joe Biden. So do his fans think there's no problem with the president's age?
I think we just do need some new candidates, some young candidates.
Chris and Bridget Giaccos live in Pennsylvania. They're entertaining friends, serving drinks from the hood of their car, as I asked them about President Biden's age.
Nobody talks about his policies or what he's doing. They just talk about the fact that he's walking around confused half the time. That's why they call him Sleepy Joe. He's too old.
And yet you're about to go and see Mick Jagger. He's practically the same age as Joe Biden.
Well, he's not leading my country.
I will say this, Big Jagger.
Bridget's mom, Carol Davis, says she thinks Joe Biden is too old now, let alone the age he'd be at the end of the second term. But Donald Trump's only 4 years younger.
If you look at the two, there's no comparison. So Donald Trump may be as old, but he's not. He doesn't act as old. He doesn't act as feeble. It's just different, I think.
Older voters are far more sympathetic. John Laird first saw the Rolling Stones in 1982, the CBS 15th gig, and he sees the value in experience.
His agility is not a 27-year-old kid.
No, it's
He's
not.
senior citizen. But he is smart. He knows what he's doing. He's experienced. I've got confidence in him so far.
Do you worry that Joe Biden will lose a lot of votes from people who think he is too old?
Yeah, that is a concern.
We don't like to be able to move like Jagger.
The Trump campaign are trying to weaponize Joe Biden's age against him, flooding social media with video that makes him look old and infirm, like the TV pictures of him seeming to wander off confused when he was meant to be posing for a photograph with other G7 leaders in Italy earlier this month. The Biden campaign complained these images have been taken unfairly out of context.
So there's a shark 10 yards away from the boat.
Donald Trump still says some very bizarre things in his rambling speeches. This was a recent rally in Nevada.
The boat is sinking. Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted?
Democrats clip up and circulate these sound bites trying to cast doubt on Trump's mental acuity.
Like I did. I took a cognitive test and I aced it. Doc Ronnie Johnson. Does everyone know
It was
Ronnie
Doc
Johnson?
Ronnie Jackson who gave him that cognitive test.
In the courtroom, we see Donald Trump for who he is. He's been convicted of 34 felonies.
The Biden campaign are hoping that voters who were prepared to consider voting for Donald Trump will now be repelled by his criminal conviction. So far, becoming the first ever former president to be found guilty of a felony has had relatively little impact on Donald Trump's poll ratings. John McHenry is vice president of polling company North Star Opinion Research.
For some of the independents, it might make a little bit of a difference. They didn't necessarily learn anything new about him, but it may say, well, I'm not happy with the economy, but I'm not comfortable with voting for a felon. Maybe just around the margins that matters, but it's a close race, so that margin might actually come to play come November.
It is a big day here in Atlanta. Tens of thousands of people will be watching the US football team playing Panama here, as well as those who are tuning in for the debate. A debate that will be the pivotal moment of the campaign so far and could set the tone for the rest of the race.
Well, Sarah Smith reporting there, and Sarah joins us live. Well, we've had a lot of debates this week. We've had one here, we've had one in France. We've got this one coming tonight, Sarah. This one, very different to the other two. I think it's fair to say. Let's start on Biden. What does Biden have to do in this debate?
Well, so that's a very interesting question. You could cast that in two ways. You could say he's got to be vigorous and energetic and quick-witted and absolutely defy his critics who say that he's too old, he's infirm and mentally unfit, which is what the Trump campaign throw at him all the time. And you just hear repeatedly again and again and again from voters. They watch TV pictures of him shuffling with his slightly uncomfortable, stiff gait, some of which comes from a bit of arthritis he's got in his spine. And they draw conclusions from that he's too old to do the job. So, you know, he's got a big perception game to try and change people's minds about that. But then again, you could argue that actually the bar is set so low for him now. People have such incredibly low expectations of what he can do to perform over this 90 minutes that, you know, if he's just coherent throughout the whole thing, then maybe that would be considered a good performance from him. And the Trump campaign are already saying that he's going to be taking performance-enhancing drugs, so that if he does come out and look a bit more energetic than usual, they're going to say that's because there's some kind of illegal substance involved in it. So maybe they're a bit worried that they're going to see a slightly more feisty Joe Biden tonight.
Is there, quite seriously though, is there a chance that if Biden performs really badly or has a brain freeze of some kind or something like that happens, the Democrats will say, okay, enough's enough, we've got to very quickly change candidate? Is that even in the realm of possibility?
Well, I think it's definitely possible. If he has a really bad night, lots of Democrats will start saying that to each other, and some of them will start saying it out loud. We've got to change this candidate. There was a lot of talk like that earlier this year, which was then kind of put to bed when Joe Biden had a really strong performance when he delivered the State of the Union speech, where he did appear vigorous enough, and that quelled a lot of concern. Just though, because a lot of people get really, really worried about him as a candidate and even start saying overtly, we've got to change horses, doesn't mean it's going to happen, because there are no men in grey suits in American politics like there are in Britain who can kind of take the president aside and say, your time is up, sir, and we're going to have to move on to a different candidate. Unless he chooses to stand aside, it's incredibly difficult to get rid of him. If somebody could challenge him at the convention in August, they could stand against him, but the chances of winning against an incumbent president, if he's refusing to stand aside, are very slim, and obviously it would do the party great damage.
Right, turning to the Trump side briefly, you mentioned it in your report, Sarah. There have been now quite a few occasions where Trump has been rambling incoherently in speeches in front of very friendly crowds who don't call him out on it in any way, and has confused his words. I mean, there's a little bit of everything you've been saying about Biden applying to Trump as well.
Yes, there is. And if you were just looking at the text of the things that Donald Trump says, you could have a field day saying this is the guy who's actually mentally unfit. He confuses Beijing with Taiwan when he's talking about foreign policy towards China and other kind of more serious incidents like that as well. He gets away with it, as you say, because it's in the context of an hour and a half, a 2-hour-long speech in front of an adoring crowd who are not going to pick him up on it. This is a very, very different environment. Each man's not going to be allowed to talk for more than 2 minutes at a time, and they're going to have to try and hit a lot of fairly precise points, as well as answering the question and rebutting what their opponent has said. And they're going to be strict with the timings. There are lights on their podium that will show them when they've only got 15 seconds left or when they have to shut up, and the mic will be cut off after 2 minutes when they do have to shut up. So it's going to have to be much, much more focused. And what we do know is that Donald Trump has refused to do any debate prep. Joe Biden's been up at Camp David doing it for days now. Trump has been having policy conversations with some of his strategic advisors. He's been talking about the issues that he'll be asked about tonight, but there's been no rehearsal for this debate. That's partly a kind of flex to say, look, I don't need to do this, I'm so on it, I can just go in there and turn in a great performance without even practicing. But that might come to bite him if he isn't just as sharply focused as he needs to be in order to get his points across in a debate instead of a very lengthy speech.
It's a fascinating one. Sarah, thanks so much. That debate, CNN, live on the BBC News Channel at 5 Live tonight as well, but it is 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'm afraid it won't have Michelle Hussein either about it. Now, it's 16 minutes past 5. We'll have some other headlines. Here's Andrew.
The Bank of England has warned that about 3 million households are set to see their mortgage payments rise in the next 2 years. Police in Kenya have fired tear gas and rubber bullets at protesters who've taken to the streets of Nairobi once again, despite a decision by the president to drop planned tax rises. The US space agency NASA has awarded Elon Musk's SpaceX a contract worth nearly $850 million to bring down the International Space Station at the end of its life.
Thank you, Andrew. Now, the election here is a week away. I'd like to say it's all people are talking about, but I noticed that the debate last night on BBC One had 2.7 million viewers, easily beaten, in fact, by the Portugal-Georgia Euro 24 match, which managed 4.2. And the last night debate got rather fewer viewers than the first one, the first ITV Sunak-Starmer debate, which had 4.8, I think it was. Maybe people are feeling they've heard the arguments now. Even 4.8 million is only a tenth of the registered voting population. Well, the election is a lot of what we on PM are talking about, providing as it does such a great chance to look at the state of the nation. And we are in the constituency of Leeds North East today. It's pretty central Leeds, really, but we're stationed at an events venue called The Mansion. It's next to Roundhay Park. What is happening in Leeds North East? Gemma Dillon is the politics reporter for the BBC in West Yorkshire and is with us here. Okay, Gemma, tell us about the campaign in Leeds North East, but Leeds more generally too.
Leeds more generally, I think it's been really quite muted this time round from all parties. I think in the past we've been a bit spoilt in West Yorkshire in that we've been visited by a lot of the big beasts of both parties. You know, David Cameron launched his manifesto here. Theresa May launched a manifesto in West Yorkshire. Boris Johnson made some big policy pledges, you know, in front of the police in West Yorkshire, about 20,000 extra police officers, whereas this time we've had no big visits from senior Conservatives, and you know, sometimes we say we've had no big visits from leading Labour figures, forgetting of course that two of the biggest beasts in the Labour shadow cabinet are actually ours, in the form of Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Yeah. Right, Leeds North East, just give us the political profile of what is.
It's a fascinating constituency really, because it's a bit of a mixed bag. It has been represented by a Labour MP since 1997, and before that it was Conservative, but it's been red for a fair while now, and it's quite a mixed bag socially. You know, it stretches from the fields and the countryside on the outskirts of Leeds through some rather affluent areas like Roundhay, where we are now. You'll have seen the big houses with the long drives, quite an affluent area, and then you move sort of closer to the city centre, places like Chapeltown, where you have more higher levels of deprivation. It's home to the Afro-Caribbean community, and if you come back in the summer, you can come to the Leeds West Indian Carnival, which is one of the longest running in Europe.
Gemma, thank you so much. Gemma Dillon there. Well, everywhere we visit, we've been helped by PM listeners, giving us guidance as to what matters to them. And here, I met up with one earlier.
My name's Julia Crookston.
Tell us about Leeds North East then.
So we're a really varied constituency. We've got areas probably with quite high deprivation. We've also got some quite well-off areas. We've got an Afro-Caribbean community, we've got a Muslim community, we've got a Jewish community, we've got a Sikh community, and on the whole people get on pretty well. And I have to say, it makes the most wonderful food at street parties.
PM listener Julia, Leeds North East voter as well, a Labour voter here. We'll hear more. We'll hear her tell another of her burning issues later. But she's not wrong in talking about the diversity of this area. In fact, you can go to Chapeltown, along a mile or so of Chapeltown Road, and you'll see many of Leeds' ethnic groups effectively come together into their different places of worship. In this election campaign nationally, of course, immigration has been a much debated issue. And while here, I wondered whether merely debating that was having any effect on community relations in this diverse area. And I met the Bishop of Leeds, the Right Reverend Nick Baines.
Just Google the map around here, you see everything. There are African Pentecostal churches, there's an Anglican church at the top of the road, there's everything you can imagine. There's a Sikh Gurdwara not far away, there are mosques, there's a new one I think being built just around the back. So you've got everything.
Do you all get on?
Yeah, of course we get on. The great thing about West Yorkshire is that the faith communities have engaged with each other for over 40 years. And, one of the questions people ask at the moment is, why isn't there more tension? Because they associate faith or religion with tension. But, the faith leaders speak to each other all the time.
Well, there's a very specific issue at the moment around Gaza and Israel.
Yeah.
And one would have expected that to cause tension.
In Leeds, you've got a very strong Jewish community of 8,000 to 10,000 people who I've got to say are pretty afraid at the moment. They feel very insecure. And then over in Bradford, which is only 10 miles away, you've got a massive Muslim community. Now, you don't try to establish strong relationships when the tensions are there. You establish them so that when the tensions come, you have the relationships already.
But there's one other area where community relations have been on strain, which is Sikhs and Hindus. And Prime Minister Modi in India, who has been perceived as really clamping down on some Sikh aspirations. What's the situation here with regard to those tensions?
What happens in other places has a big impact here. It's almost as if we have a hierarchy of violence or oppression, and we pay attention to some and not others. So they have a valid case in saying, well, why isn't violence against our communities or retribution against our communities taken as seriously?
All right, well, we've taken a 2-minute drive up the Chapeltown Road to the Sikh temple. Actually, it's a very, very large Sikh temple with parking for probably 100 cars. So it's a sizable community here.
My name is Gurmukh Singh Begum. I'm not one of those people that says, I'm here, now let's close the door for everybody else. I'm not that type of person. The British people and the country is very, very tolerant. People that come to this country need to understand that we have responsibilities as people. We have to appreciate what we have here. But most of the people who have joined us recently, they have forgotten that responsibility side of it. What responsibility you have to this country. Sikhs are, shall we say, relatively peace-loving. So that in a little compartment, shall we say, this lot don't bother anybody, etc. They look after themselves, they pray to Guruji and the rest of it. And they're getting ignored, basically. Certainly by the politicians.
Gurmukh Singh Begum there. You've heard a Christian, you've heard a Sikh. There is a mosque just off Chapeltown Road. We didn't make it there, but obviously this is a seat with a lot of Muslim voters. And this afternoon I spoke to Yunus Lunat, who's a lawyer and community activist. He has a long association with sport. He was actually the first Muslim to be appointed to the full council of the Football Association.
On the whole, the relationships are excellent and people get on, and generally people want to get on as well. It just saddens me sometimes that it's the politicians and those at the top that almost seem to seek to have a reason to cause division and to justify their existence. It just saddens me that, because on the whole, I walk around Leeds, I walk around locally here, I don't have an issue, people do get on.
Well, look, immigration has obviously played a very big part in this election campaign. It's one of the most notable issues. And some might say having that debate is aimed at people who are living here who come from other countries, first or second generation. And I wonder whether you're getting that sense, or whether, everybody recognises there's a valid debate to be had about immigration.
Well, I say yes, a valid debate needs to be had. There are issues about immigration, there's issues about legal migration, there's issues about illegal migration. What concerns me, whenever something happens, the focus seems to be on the Muslim community. Even if the focus should be on, and I'll use the term loosely, Eastern European migrants. An Eastern European commits a criminal offence. For some reason, we still have to answer for that. For some reason, the microscope still seems to be fall on the Muslim community, on the Asian community. And we're now second, third generation. Can we be allowed to be British? I've never known anything other than being British. My ancestor is Indian. I've never been to India. I only know Britain. I'm British. And I had a conversation 3 weeks ago with somebody. She was trying to be polite to me. First question was, where are you from? I'm from Yorkshire. And I emphasise my Yorkshire accent. No, where are you from? And this person was actually trying to be very nice to me.
Hand over that
I only know Yorkshire, I only know Britain. Can I, even in my 50s, can I proudly say I'm British? But sorry, the way that some of these politicians, the way some of these debates take place, it almost restricts me from being a proud British citizen.
That's very interesting. So you do feel that there is a kind of a slant about immigrants or people who are maybe, second, third generation, makes them slightly uncomfortable about the way some of this is spoken about.
The bottom line is, I can go anywhere and I can talk to anybody. And what that proves is, when you scratch below the surface, the man on the street, or the man on the street, or the woman, will get on. You'll have a conversation. We all want to get on. But for some reason, these people at the top have to somehow stoke division to almost justify their existence.
There is one area, very clearly, where Muslim voters have been, particularly in the Rochdale by-election, incidentally, which was very dramatic, where Muslim voters have been much more concerned about Gaza than the average British voter. And talk to me about Gaza and how that is playing in this election campaign among Muslims you hang out with.
It's the primary driving factor, and that's evidenced by the number of independent candidates that are actually standing. But when you look at the debates on the mainstream, it just hasn't featured, and it's almost as if it's a foregone conclusion. The mainstream parties have accepted that Muslims are not going to vote for them. They're not even trying to engage that vote. You know, I've seen very little, and I say this to the independent candidates that are standing as well, I see very little of candidates trying to convince them to actually vote for them. I've just seen nothing of that. I've seen no evidence of that.
Yunus Luna, lawyer, community activist, Muslim voter, on the feelings of Muslim communities that he's mixing with. We'll actually hear more from the Bishop of Leeds later in the programme. Now, the government in Japan is working on a plan called the Autoflow Road. It's extraordinary. It's a 500-kilometre conveyor belt, or network of conveyor belts, which are designed to carry freight between two big urban centres, Tokyo and Osaka. It could run 24 hours a day, with containers carrying up to a ton of cargo, each relatively small containers. It's probably not an idea you've heard before, but it would save on lorry drivers. The Infrastructure and Transport Ministry in Japan says the Autoflow system could handle a quarter of the cargo flowing between Tokyo and Osaka. Is this the age of the Autoflow system? We're joined by Gareth Dennis, a railway design engineer specialising in transport systems and policy. Gareth, such an intriguing thing, and obviously the Japanese often think outside the box, don't they? What do you think of a conveyor belt this long?
Yeah, I mean, it's as ever with these things, the technology often is less interesting than the sort of the wider reasons, the context, the political and economic context with why it's come about. But yeah, so this system is pretty novel. Discussions of using conveyor belts, or in some cases sort of miniaturized maglev for this kind of freight application, had been kicking around for about a decade or more, actually much longer than that, but sort of seriously for a decade now, spurred on partly by kind of technological investments in the Middle East as well. And so it's certainly an interesting proposition. Whether it's scalable, as we've discussed, as is being discussed by the Japanese government, not with any commitment, by the way, yet. It's still kind of those early days, sort of, this might be a thing we'll do type discussions, but whether it actually works at the scale they're talking about remains to be seen.
Yeah. What I don't understand is, what have they just reinvented an alternative to a technology that already we know works, which is called the railway line, which doesn't require lorry after lorry. You can have one driver with loads and loads of lorries worth of freight.
Well, indeed, Evan, you shot my fox there, because indeed that's precisely what the query I would have is. And there are a couple of things at play there. One is that Japan, they have a very unique approach to railway operation, unique in the world. They have a very heavily privatised and self-funding railway system, but it's very much a passenger railway. They carry in a vanishingly small amount of freight on their railway. And as a result of that, I think the challenge, the railways run at incredibly high densities, so they really squeeze the capacity out of those railway lines. And so squeezing freight, both from a capacity and an engineering perspective, getting freight on that railway is difficult, but also the organisational, the commercial, the operational side is very difficult for them to create the additional freight capacity that they're talking about with this system. However, I would still say that building a understood, known, as you say, railway technology that we understand that is very effective, the most effective way of moving loads across land, building new railways would, I would argue, be cheaper and probably more effective than going for a novel system. So there are a few things at play here. It's worth saying this is not something that's sort of far off and that we in the UK, that's not pertinent to us, because we're facing a similar kind of economic and demographic cliff edge that Japan is, just maybe a decade or two behind, which is an aging population, increasingly hostile views of immigration, and therefore challenges with fulfilling things like, HGV drivers in the UK is a known challenge. So we're kind of facing some of these similar challenges, except we have a railway system that